I love to champion the work of up-and-coming Black comic creators, from writers like Stephanie Williams or Brandon Thomas to artists like Nick Draper Ivey or Kari Randolph, even up-and-coming publishers like Bequest Studios. I love to spotlight the work that they're doing and their place in a long lineage of Black comic writers, artists, and publishers. And when you ask most of these newer names who their influences were, a lot of them will point to the groundbreaking achievements of Milestone Media, a company founded in 1992 that I may know a thing or two about as well. But even Milestone owes their legacy to a tradition that started way back in 1947 with the publication of the first comic by a Black writer, artist, and publishing team. And today, I'm here to tell the story of All-Negro Comics #1. Now, the story of All-Negro Comics is really the story of Orrin C. Evans. Orrin Evans was a pioneering journalist. He's born in 1902 in the Philadelphia area, and he was a reporter who worked for several Black newspapers, including The Crisis, which was the official magazine of the NAACP. But he's a groundbreaking journalist because in 1930, he took a job at the Philadelphia Record, which was a mainstream white newspaper. And this made Mr. Evans the first Black man to be a journalist covering regular or general assignments at a mainstream white newspaper. And he didn't take this lightly and just cover sports or something like that. No, this man was a serious reporter. A lot of his reporting was on the mistreatment of Black soldiers during and after World War II. And this reporting got him in a lot of trouble. It got him death threats and all sorts of craziness at his door for reporting those types of things in the 1940s. Now, despite the death threats, despite the hostility, he actually stayed at the Philadelphia Record until they closed in 1947. And that is when the idea for All-Negro Comics was born. Now, Mr. Evans, of course, was, like I said, very active when it comes to, the conversation for civil rights and racial equality. This was years before the modern civil rights movement got started. But Mr. Evans felt that journalism could be the key in advancing racial equality. And he felt that comic books could be the next step in sort of humanizing the African-American community. So All-Negro Comics was founded by Evans along with 4 other former employees of the Philadelphia Record. And the only book they ever published was All-Negro Comics issue #1. And it was billed to be an anthology comics in the style of like Action Comics and Sensation Comics. They called it another milestone in the history of Negro journalism. And Time magazine called the book the first to be drawn by Negro artists and peopled entirely by Negro characters. Put simply, this was the first comic book written by Black people, drawn by Black artists, and written for a Black audience. And it's not, stereotypical. It's not overly political. It's just people of color in heroic roles. Now, the comic opens with a foreword from Orrin C. Evans that just details the significance of the publication and the pride that he hopes to invoke as the series continues on. And then we get to the stories. The lead feature of All-Negro Comics #1 is a story called Ace Harlem. Now, Ace Harlem is basically a detective story, kind of inspired by the likes of Dick Tracy. But Ace Harlem is a Black police detective who is out solving a murder mystery. Now, this is sort of like the classic crime doesn't pay trope that you see in a lot of detective stories of its day. What's funny is like, even though Ace Harlem is like doing all the detective work, like he's sleuthing, he's looking for clues and following up on leads and things like that, the crime kind of solves itself by the end of it. And again, just sort of ends with a message like, well, crime doesn't pay. But It's definitely a solid feature. Now, the second book, or the second feature in the anthology is called Do Dillies. Now, Do Dillies is probably my least favorite, but it follows these two creatures who are called Do Dillies. One who is born like of the land, and so he has legs, but he also has wings. And then the other is of the sea or of the pond. Now, Do Dillies are explained as these creatures that can only be seen by the smallest of children who live near bodies of water. And this book follows these two characters, Bibber and Bubbles, as they are trying to sort of coexist and make friends. But also they're trying to find something to eat. Well, Bibber won't eat anything of the land because they're all cousins, and Bubbles won't eat anything from the water because they're all cousins. And so they got to find some middle ground. Now, like I said, it's probably my least favorite of the anthology just because it feels a bit overlong, but it is still really cute. And the Do Dillies are the things that the babies are talking to when you think they're talking to themselves. I just think that's pretty cool. Now, the next feature in the anthology is a prose story called Ezekiel's Manhunt. And it follows this kid named Ezekiel. He's 14, and his younger brother, Tom, who were just kind of out one day and they get kidnapped by a wanted grifter. And Ezekiel has to use his street smarts to outsmart the grifter, save his younger brother, and also get a cool reward for helping to capture this criminal. It's actually a really solid story. Like, I know we read comics, we're here for the pictures, not the words, but it was actually really good. It's only a 2-page story. You can read it actually pretty quickly. And that leads us to what's probably the comic with the most staying power, and that is Lion Man. Now, Lion Man is a college-educated Black man who is sent to the Gold Coast of Africa by the United Nations to get this. He's there to protect this mountain where there's a large natural deposit of uranium. So he's there to protect this area of the Gold Coast from poachers and outsiders who would seek to basically take that uranium and use it for purposes of war. And man, does that sound like something that may have come 20 years later with Black Panther and Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. But anyway, so Lion Man, as he's known, is like this big technological genius. He's creating like all these different diversions and things like that. But he's taken on a ward, a local native named Bubba, who gets him into more trouble than he needs to be in as he's defending the Gold Coast from these poachers. The Magic Mound, as it was called. I think it's Magic Mountain, actually. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. The Magic Mountain of the African Gold Coast is what it's called. And like I said, I like it. And after Lion Man, this first issue, you get a couple of short 1-page stories. The first is Hep Chicks on Parade, which is like a series of like 1-panel gags that feature these high fashion women. You know, really cool stuff. Definitely of its time, but still cool. And then the second 1-page strip we get is Lil Eggy, about this man named Egbert and his overbearing wife who like gives him an allowance of $2 to live on off of every paycheck. And it's just a riot. Funny stuff. Again, of its time, but it's great. And of the last feature in All-Negro Comics #1, it's probably my favorite. It's called Sugarfoot. And it follows these two hobos, Sugarfoot and Snake Oil, who are traveling musicians who will, you know, play music in exchange for food, room, and board. And so when a local farmer sort of obliges them, and it's like, hey, you can come hang out at my place. I got some work I need done. I want some music. So sure. They go. And of course, Sugarfoot cannot help himself but to try to woo the farmer's daughter. And there's a great gag, a great recurring gag where the girl's name is Ample and he's giving her all these compliments. She's like, no, I'm Ample. And so that was probably my favorite because it's slapstick. It's funny. And it's the type of thing that like you could see like on Looney Tunes or something like that, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Now, the feature ends, or the anthology ends, with a sort of PSA from Ace Harlem reminding people to stay in church and just play good, clean sports and say no to drugs and stuff like that. And then there's a promise of things to come in All-Negro Comics issue number 2. For example, Orrin Evans was excited to do like a Black History calendar where they celebrate Negro or Black people's achievements up until that point and things like that. But ultimately, issue 2 of All-Negro Comics never came. Basically, the backlash to this issue was pretty swift and overwhelming. They were never allowed to produce another issue. In fact, the distributors refused to work with them. And even the companies selling them newsprint refused to sell paper to even print the comics on. So the legend says that the artwork for issue 2 was completed, but it never saw the light of day. And founder Orrin Evans, eventually, he wasn't super bitter. He just went back to a career in journalism, and that's what he did for the rest of his life. But even though All-Negro Comics didn't get to see publication any further, their legacy is cemented by all the stuff you see behind me. Now, what's really cool is 75 years later, we got this. This is a hardcover. This is the All-Negro Comics 75th Anniversary Edition. It was compiled by Chris Robinson, who is a comics editor who you may know from the Marvel Voices program. But he led the effort to remaster All-Negro Comics number 1. And so you get this great hardcover with these fully remastered images, not necessarily retouched, but remastered. You get the full anthology issue in its entirety, which I guess is what full means. But we get these stories reprinted here, and that is exactly how I read them. There are other versions of this available. It's hit the public domain, so you can find companies that'll do like these large size reprints of stuff like this. But I think this is the best way to read this story, because not only do you get the full remastered issue, but you also get a series of essays. Kiana Whitted's got an essay in here. There's a lot of really cool commentary on the book. David Brothers. But not only do you get that commentary, but you also get new stories featuring the heroes from All-Negro Comics number 1. So there's an Ace Harlem feature here, drawn by Ray Anthony Height. There is a Lion Man feature. There's, you even get Egbert, Sugarfoot, and Snake Oil, like everybody. The gang's all here in these new stories that make you wonder, like, what if this was allowed to continue? Would we know Lion Man more than we know, say, Black Panther? Whatever the case may be, right? These stories are enduring, and this was the first in a long storied legacy of African-American contributions to the medium of comic books. And like I said, I think this is the best way to own it. So I want to give a huge shout out to Hive Comicade, which is an online retailer that specializes in independent Black and people of color creator-owned titles like this one. They've got this hardcover in stock. Huge thanks to them for rushing this one to my door so I could feature it in this video. And you should check it out. I'll put a link in the description down below. But, as we're closing out Black History Month, I wanted to tell the story of All-Negro Comics because it is so, so important to understand that Black people have been a part of comics from literally 8 years after, we get the appearance of Superman. This legacy, this medium is for all of us, and we should be proud of all of our contributions, whether we're talking Milestone or Tribe or Hive Comicade or Fourth Wall Productions or Advent Comics, who's working on a huge, huge crossover of a ton of independent Black character and company crossovers. Like, that's crazy. You guys should be proud, but the legacy starts with All-Negro Comics number 1. Thank you guys for watching this deep dive. I really appreciate it. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I give a huge thanks to the channel family for making videos on this channel possible. I'll see you guys in another review or video very soon. Until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today. Peace.